Excellencies, esteemed panelists, ladies and gentlemen. Just for the introduction, I am Colonel Sandeep Kapoor. I am the military advisor at the Permanent Mission of India, and I deal with C-34 and peacekeeping issues. At the outset, I would like to thank IPI and the Australian Strategic Peace Institute for hosting this event. I would also like to congratulate Lisa for an excellent report. This report presents a number of practical recommendations which, if implemented, will have a very positive contribution in the field of policy making in peacekeeping. Now, this policy forum comes very timely, especially when we are looking forward to implementation of some very important policies. The first one being the reforms on the peace and security architecture and the Action for Peace Initiative, or the A4P. A lot has already been said, and as Alexandra just brought out, my aim would be to bring the military flavor to this important subject. Let me once again take a stock of all the important stakeholders which have been very well brought out in the report. And also, as I go along, I'd like to bring out their roles and implications. So as I see, the first and foremost is the Security Council. The Council has the responsibility for maintaining international peace and security, and therefore, it engages in a host of activities which directly shape and influence the peacekeeping policy. And their direct impact is through the presidential statements and the resolutions on mandates. And as a military man, talking about mandates, so the mandates are the cornerstone for any peacekeeping mission. And mandates provide the authority and the legal framework for the mission to accomplish their tasks. And from the mandates are drawn the concept of operations and the rules of engagement, which dictate the use of force, use of weapon system, authority to carry weapon, authority to detain, search, and disarm, and the reaction to civil action unrest. And if that be so, it is very important that the mandates, they are simple, realistic, and achievable. Simple, so that there is clarity in implementation at the field level. Realistic, so that they match the existing situation on the ground. And achievable, so that it is within the capability of the mission. And for this to happen, the Council should have a very clear picture of the ground. And this is readily available with the TCCs. The same issue was also highlighted by the director of DPET and also by the ambassador, the importance of the field. Now, also it is the imperative of the Council to ensure that requisite resources are provided to the mission to fulfill its mandate. And that boils down to the number of mandate components within the mission. As of today, there are at least 6 out of 14 missions which have more than 15 mandate components. This is nothing new, whatever I am speaking, because the HIPPO report of 2015, which is till date one of the most important report taking stock of peacekeeping in a holistic manner, has highlighted the importance of realistic mandates, prioritization of mandates, and also the fact that expectations from missions should be commensurate to the capabilities provided. Now I'd like to come to the second important stakeholder. A lot has been said, and that is the Secretariat. The Secretariat has the prime responsibility of drafting the peacekeeping policies. It was highlighted by Lisa, and also for providing the guidance on peacekeeping issues through the various departments, the Department of Peacekeeping Operations, Department of Field Support, and of course, the Department of Policy Evaluation and Training. Here again, the Secretariat has to rely on 2 important sources. The first one being the C-34 guidance. I think Inderjeet has spoken in detail on C-34. Now, just at the sake of repetition, it is the third important stakeholder which is responsible to provide guidance on peacekeeping as a whole. And thereafter, the member states, regional and sub-regional organizations, which I could loosely term as the troop contributing countries, police contributing countries, the finance contributing countries, and the field experts in the mission, which are in fact the fourth important stakeholder. Now again, falling back to the Secretariat. Secretariat also has a very important role to keep the Security Council updated on how the missions are performing, and which is very crucial input, because this is what is going to lead to mid-course corrections and mandate renewals. This again has been highlighted in the past in the Brahimi report of 2000, which stated that the Secretariat should inform the Council not what they want to hear, but what they should hear. Therefore, the strategic reviews of the missions need to bring out the facts and should not be tailored. Also on this important issue, the Hippo report had emphasized the importance of a field-focused secretariat. Another important role of the Secretariat is to update the C-34 and the TCCs and PCCs on the progress of mission and the latest policies being developed. And this has to be a two-way communication with equal responsibility at both ends. Now the fifth stakeholder, my fellow panelist has already spoken about the fifth committee. So without speaking much, seldom any decision can be taken without the financial concurrence. And therefore the importance of keeping them in the know-how from the very inception cannot be re-emphasized. Thereafter we have the two formal consultation mechanisms. Lisa spoke about one of them. One being the Security Council Working Group, and the second one, the consultations of the Security Council with the TCCs, PCCs on mandate renewals. And finally are the informal groups, such as the Military Police Advisory Community, the Strategic Police Advisory Group, the Group of Friends, etc. While all these stakeholders have a very important role to play, however, in my opinion, small groups can seldom lead to consensus in a multilateral forum on such issues related to peacekeeping policies due to political divisions among various stakeholders. And therefore, the mantra or the panacea, the final solution is inclusivity, transparency, and shared accountability. I'll be very brief and I'll be quick now. Now to follow this, we need a very strong interplay between the Security Council, the Secretariat, and the member states, and also follow the guidance provided by C-34. Just to reinforce my recommendation, let me highlight two classic examples before I conclude. One of the examples is the policy on the peacekeeping intelligence, which was released by the Secretariat without taking note of the C-34 guidance. It has to be understood here that the most important stakeholder here are the peacekeepers, and intelligence is a prerequisite for their safety and security. However, sensitivities of the member states and host nations are equally important. Therefore, any guidance provided by the C-34 is consensual and needs to be adhered to. Another such example, my last example, is on the Security Council Resolution 2348 of 31st March 2017 on MONUSCO ordering the drawdown of troops at the time when there was an increased activity of armed groups, which was followed by the policy on protection through projection by the Secretariat, which practically is not implementable without enablers such as intelligence and air assets. And in this case, we are in a situation where we have withdrawn from a number of places, thereby losing our touch from the FARDC, the PNC, the community leaders, local populace, NGOs, who were the prime source to provide inputs on POC-related matters. And secondly, we do not have the wherewithal to react in such eventualities due to lack of air assets. Having said that, I would like to conclude by saying that not all is ineffective in the present setup, and a lot of good work is being done and is on the way. We look forward to the integrated performance policy framework, which will ensure shared accountability at all levels, as also the implementation of the SG's initiative on action for peace in an inclusive and transparent manner. Thank you.
How do you see community engagement? And so pushing the envelope and evolving even further, how can local communities be involved in policymaking? Obviously not always possible or practical, but perhaps especially for mandate renewals and policies that are affecting future missions. Thank you.
So at the outset, the peacekeeping principles, they provide us a greater amount of flexibility because they speak about impartiality, consent of parties, non-use of force, and it talks about people-friendly operations. And from there I come when I look at when we look at the Hippo recommendations. One of the recommendations which I highlighted was field-focused secretariat. If you look at that, the secretariat has to have a very good interface with the field, and when we talk about field, it is mission as a whole, and when the mission as a whole, it is not only the military on the ground, it is also the police, it is also the civil component, and it is very important for them to get a feel of the ground and how things are working, how things are functioning. And you find there are a number of missions which are not only into purely peacekeeping, but it is a mix of peacekeeping and a peace building, or there is a DDR and SSR which is going on all along. And that is why it is very important to engage with the communities, the community leaders, which will give them a very clear input on how and what is the kind of progress they have achieved with the kind of mandate they have got. So I think, yes, that is one link which should be exploited, because that is the place from where we are getting the sense, and from the mission hierarchy we are getting it back here at New York. Thank you.
Thank you. It might be interesting to use the combined brain power here to think about how can we better link the finances to the mandates. So what, especially a question for Eugène, I think, but how can we achieve something on that? It's a very difficult issue, but how can we get mandates that actually have the means to perform on their mandates? Thank you.
Yes, so regarding the linking of finance and mandate, that's a very good question. So Lisa in her report spoke of something very good, and that was about trust between the various stakeholders. So I think it is something related to that trust. So it has to be trust and commitment, like commitment from the troop contributing countries to follow the mandate and fulfill it, the commitment from the financial contributors to provide the requisite resources and funds. And I think that when the Security Council is working on the mandate, it is very clear the number of components which are there, and generally what is the kind of funding which would be required for each particular component to fulfill that particular resources, having a realistic look on how these mandates are going to be, subcomponents, the sub-mandates are going to be fulfilled. And I think here the integrated performance policy framework, which is presently under consideration, provides one such opportunity, because there we are talking of all stakeholders with the troop contributors, the finance contributors, the equipment providers, everybody, the Secretariat, the policymaking. So I think probably somewhere we have to make a mix of that and then try and match it, and we will be able to get that some kind of an exercise done of commitments for the mandates. And that may also lead to, because that's very important, because that once we start working on that, we may just realize that probably we do not have those kind of budgets to fulfill all the mandate components, and thereafter we may have to go for what was already told in the Hippo report, that you need to prioritize your mandate components. Thank you.